Welcome. NOAA has just released its March of 2022 Global Climate Report, and this video is a description of some of the data in that report. A quick summary of what we're going to cover today. March was the fifth warmest March on record, that's of 143 samples. La Niña is projected to persist through the Northern Hemisphere summer, perhaps even longer. The Arctic had the 9th lowest sea ice extent so far recorded. The Antarctic, the second lowest sea ice extent, and atmospheric carbon dioxide reached 418.81 parts per million. We had above average temperatures in both North and South America and Africa. Asia was the 9th hottest March on record. Australia was the 5th hottest, and that was associated with some flooding as well in Australia. And La Niña is firmly ensconced in the Eastern Pacific. On the right here, we have the percentiles map of temperature distribution across the planet for March. You can see that there are no record colds anywhere on the planet, that's dark blue. There are a lot of record highs, that's the dark red, and most of the planet is either well above average or warmer than average, that's the pink and the darker pink. You can see the large blue area in the Eastern Pacific. That is indicative of a La Niña. Overall, the numbers show that globally we were 0.95 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. The land was nearly twice as much of that at 1.66 degrees centigrade. The ocean was 0.68 degrees centigrade above the average, and that's in 5th place. The Northern Hemisphere was 1.24 degrees centigrade, and the Southern Hemisphere was 0.65 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. 10 of the last 12 years have been the hottest on record, and it looks as though if 2022 carries on the way it started, we're going to have 11 of the last 13 years have been the hottest on record. I've marked 2022 here as 5th place. That's showing that it's well ahead of 2021 in terms of ranking, and so therefore it looks as though 2022 will probably be placed something like 6th place all time as far as annual temperatures are concerned. So far I've been dealing with surface temperatures, not temperatures high up in the atmosphere. So let's take a look at that, particularly the lower troposphere. These are data from the University of Alabama, Huntsville, provided by Roy Spencer. March showed an increase in global temperatures up to about 0.15 degrees centigrade above zero level, which is determined from the average of 1991 to 2020. The long-term trend here is 0.14 degrees centigrade per decade. So you'll often hear that the satellite data is showing no increase in temperature. In fact, it's showing quite a strong trend, which is very similar to what you're getting from the surface temperatures, a little bit lower. People seem to take a lot of store in the amount of sea ice, so I'm including it. In March of 2022 was the 9th smallest sea ice extent in the Arctic. In the Antarctic, we have a slightly different story. In March, the sea ice there reached its 2nd smallest extent on record. As you can see, though, the amount of sea ice varies quite wildly in the Antarctic, and overall there's a slight increase over time in the amount of sea ice there. If you combine the Antarctic and Arctic sea ice levels, overall the sea ice level is dropping significantly with time. As I said before, the La Niña is still in place, and these are models of what will likely happen over the next few months. One model shows that La Niña will slowly dissipate into ENSO-neutral conditions long about the middle of this year. However, the other one shows that steadfastly La Niña conditions will extend through to the end of the Northern Hemisphere winter. We will have to wait and see which of these is correct. Obviously, La Niña is confusing the temperature measurements, making the large proportion of the Pacific Ocean cooler than average. So what does this do to global temperatures? Well, it depresses them on average. If you just look at the times when the Southern Oscillation Index is similar to what it is now, which is 2.9, then you get a curve that looks like this. And you can see that the global temperature anomaly has been increasing steadily even during La Nina times as extreme as we have now. So that means that the Earth is warming overall compared to previous times when La Nina was just as strong as it is now. Many people consider that carbon dioxide is the bête noire in all of this, and indeed carbon dioxide increased to 418.81 parts per million over this month, but that is only an increase of 1.17 parts per million compared with the same time last year. And that's a considerable drop in the increase in carbon dioxide from what we've had in previous months, which have been more like 2 or 2.25 parts per million. So that's maybe a hopeful sign. Welcome. Some people like to think that solar conditions are affecting our climate. I believe that they generally do not, and certainly aren't creating the global warming that people are seeing currently. To back this up, we can take a look at the sunspot number, which is the top frame here. And you can see that last month it was around about 80, and it's continuing to grow quite rapidly, much faster than the previous cycle, and also much faster than the models, that's that red line, predicted it would. That could mean that we're in for a much larger solar cycle than we have had for the last few years. March was very active actually. It had 1 X flare, 14 M flares, and 222 C flares. These are different rankings of flares. M's being 10 times larger than C's and X's being 10 times larger than M's. In the bottom frame, you can see the same sunspot number values, but with the standard models for modeling the solar cycle ahead of time. This is the SC and the CM prediction. CM predictions put the sunspot number at the end of 2023 at about 120. The SC predictions put it at over 200. So the truth will probably lie somewhere between those two models, but nonetheless that still indicates a much higher solar cycle than we had last time around. And of course, those arguing that we're going to have a grand solar minimum and therefore a new little ice age are having a really tough time explaining all this solar activity. So in summary then, for March 2022, La Nina continues. Globally, it was the 5th hottest March on record, and solar cycle 25 is much more active than forecasted, at least so far. So thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please pass it on to others. Otherwise, please stay safe and be well, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.